Greg's here. I'm here. You're here. We're all here. We're going to talk Nebraska football. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. Huskers Live, edition number 130 here at the Voice of College Football. Greg Peterson, as I mentioned, is here. Husker Online is the platform. You can catch it right here on YouTube and check out Greg's work. And it's going to be hot and heavy and tons of traffic here in just a few weeks as Greg, of course, goes to Big Ten Media Days and then right into fall camp. So there's going to be a ton of great video there at Husker Online. Greg, what's going on tonight?
Not a whole lot. Just ran some errands before we went on the air and got some dog food because I'm going to need that tonight. And actually ran into a dude from high school that was ahead of me in the checkout. And he's like, Peterson. I'm like, yeah. Remember me? No. So it's kind of one of those deals. Pretty funny.
We've got dueling black shirts going, unless yours is blue. Maybe yours is blue.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a really dark blue. So I thought we were
very dark navy.
We were honoring the black shirts tonight.
No, they're they haven't done anything to honor them for. So
true.
In a while.
Folks, appreciate you being here. Consider the super chat. Also, hit the like button before you get settled. And again, you guys ultimately produce the show. In about 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to have plenty to talk about every week. But we're kind of still in that lull. And a ton of commits came in the last several weeks for us to talk about. But you guys produce the show. So we'll take your comments and questions. I will say this, Greg, about the bombshell that was dropped across college football yesterday with Pat Fitzgerald and everything that went on at Northwestern. And shoot, I don't know the man. So I always say this about coaches that I respect, that I'm respecting them from afar. You obviously, with your work at Nebraska, have gotten to know all the head coaches there. I've gotten to know, to a certain extent, head coaches in previous jobs, guys at various SEC schools. But a guy like Pat Fitzgerald, it was just everything that he's represented in college football seems to have been completely above board, first class.
Absolutely.
Just a great coach, both on the field and in the way he conducted the program. So when this continue to unravel and the details it just is a horrible look and just not anything that most of us would attribute to Pat Fitzgerald.
I was shocked. I mean, because like you said, this is a guy that was just had so much respect and reverence in college football. I mean, he'd been there forever. And, the last time I saw him was in Dublin. And it was after, Northwestern beat Nebraska. And myself and Steve Sipple were out on the field doing our recap video feature from the game. And we were in a hurry because they were turning on the sprinklers. And they told us we only had a few minutes. And we're talking. I'd asked Steve a question, and here's Pat Fitzgerald walking right, behind our camera down the sideline. He's wearing his suit already again, and he's with one of his handlers. Is probably his SID or whatever, and he stopped and he's like, "Hey guys, how you doing?" And it stopped Steve in his tracks about what he was talking about because it was so funny that, because that's the kind of guy he is, he's a very personable guy. And it's just such an unfortunate thing, especially the timing of it was really, it really puts Northwestern in a hole right now going into fall camp for sure. And obviously it was probably a move too, where, that would have probably, if Pat Fitzgerald was in Indianapolis in 2 weeks at Big Ten Media Days, that would have dominated the whole thing as well. And I don't think Northwestern wanted to deal with that. So, boy, it is. It's hard to get used to. It was about 24 hours ago when this went down. So, Very, very unfortunate, and a guy, a coach that I respect a lot. I have a lot of respect for him, and you know, we'll see what happens. You know, I'm sure he'll land another job. I'm sure of that. I mean, because of the relationships that he has in the business and everything. But yeah, he's not. You haven't seen the last of Pat Fitzgerald, but I'm not one to speculate what really went on there. So, it is what it is, I guess.
So to bring it around to GBR, is there anyone on the current coaching staff or anybody connected to Nebraska football? Because I came up with 29 candidates. So we were doing a live stream when Pat Fitzgerald was fired. We started listing out, and I have yet to produce a video, but I wanted to touch on all these guys. But is there anyone that you can think of, whether it be on the current staff or connected to Nebraska football in any way, that you think could be a candidate?
One name comes to mind because I know he's not doing anything, but being on the radio every morning with my colleague Steve Sipple would be Bill Bush. Definitely a guy that has experience. Not as much as a head coach, but he has been a head coach in the past. But that's a guy that lives and breathes football, and I'm sure if they asked him to come and interview, he'd go to Chicago tomorrow. So, but currently, no, those guys are way too young. I don't think any of them, besides Matt Rule, probably ever met Pat Fitzgerald. I could be wrong, but former guy. It's hard to say. I mean, I don't want to go the Mickey Joseph route because, again, he has not been a head coach either, and I think his legal problems have been cleared, so he would be eligible to move away from Lincoln. But I don't know. I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, it's an odd situation, obviously, but the job's also an odd one because they're playing in the Big Ten, but they're not. There's the academics, there's the size of the school. It's not a football power, but they still play in the Big Ten. That and nothing's going to be expected out of this team. They were already horrible on the field before this happened. They were terrible last year. Like
for about 3 years in a row, they've been pretty bad.
Well, no.
Well, I don't know about 2 years.
Yeah, the last couple of years they've been awful.
But they were, they were in the Big Ten title game 3 years ago. So,
yeah. So on one hand, this is an opportunity for a coach to come in and just kind of be a hero. It's almost like coming in after the Joe Paterno, Jerry Sandusky, and all that, and Bill O'Brien comes in, and they have scholarship reductions and suspensions and bowl ban, and there's nothing but up. Well, this is also connected to because they've just been so bad on the field that, and who knows what kind of player suspensions there will be after they review all this and investigate, and player suspensions or dismissals from the team or whatever that's going to look like. They could just be scrounging around to piece together a football team. Who knows that, it's an opportunity for a young coach to come in, get a Big Ten job. And if he goes 1-11 the first year, that's a mulligan. The first year is going to be a complete, nobody's going to expect anything. Nobody's going to hold anyone accountable to. It's going to be more about just get the program back on its feet. And, the record's going to be kind of inconsequential.
Well, that will be next year. This year you throw it out because they just did announce within the hour or two that they are retaining the entire staff. So it's probably going to be an interim. They didn't say anything about the head coach, but it's probably going to be an interim head coach. I mean, it has to be. And you either elevate somebody from the current staff or you bring in, somebody that's not in the game right now that could do the job for a year And who knows? Maybe they would want to do it later. I mean, the one thing that they do have going for them, well, two things. Obviously, they're in Chicago, but their facilities are amazing. The new facilities that they built are probably the most beautiful facilities in college football. And you're talking about a team that, a program that is not an Alabama, Georgia, caliber type program, obviously, but it is a Power 5 program, and the academics do play a big part in players at Northwestern go to class every day. I mean, that's a given. You don't play if you don't go to class, unlike a lot of other schools. So, so they do have a couple things going for them, and I'm sure it will attract somebody to come and help out for a year, and then they'll reassess everything and they'll hire their guy next season, and then you'll see a whole new coaching staff there. That's just the way it goes. But right now, it's the time. Like I said about the timing. You're 2 weeks. Well, for them, 3 weeks away from fall camp, and all of a sudden you don't have a head coach anymore, and the pickings are very slim for what's out there at this time of year. So, they're going to roll with what they have and try to keep everything, the continuity the same, and keep going on, with what they were building to do. And then, everything is going to change next year.
I thought of three guys who don't currently have a job yet. Jim Leonard, the former Wisconsin defensive coordinator. He's still out there.
Who we thought was going to be, Cincinnati head coach, or I mean, he was penciled in. Even the Wisconsin head coach, he was penciled in for. But yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so I thought of him. He was actually the first guy I thought of. I thought Jim Leonard has still not moved on from Wisconsin. He can certainly be a defensive coordinator almost anywhere he wants. He was one of the best in the business. Sure. He was being courted by NFL teams, so I don't know if he would want to do that. And as you mentioned, he was the interim at Wisconsin last year as the head coach. Paul Christ, sticking with Wisconsin.
Wow. But, I'm both very familiar with the conference. So, yeah.
And Ken Niumatalolo, the former Navy coach, who was there for a long time.
Very impressive guy in my book. I always liked watching his Navy teams play. I'm a little bit biased because my dad was a naval officer. And, so Navy is always kind of like my closet number 2 favorite team in college football. So,
yeah, he did a nice job there. Did a great job. He was there for 16 seasons.
And heck, if you had him too as your head coach, I'm sure you're going to be you're going to have that Hawaiian pipeline of players automatically.
I've got a fourth guy for you who doesn't have a job.
How about Bo
Pelini? Got a nice resume.
How about Bo Pelini?
Bo Pelini. Okay, I wasn't going to go there, but Bo Pelini. It's just strange that I know that he's got the reputation as not the most likable guy in the world, but he churned out 9 and 10 win seasons at Nebraska, and he went to Youngstown State. And for him to never get another shot seems rather odd.
Yeah, if he learned to keep his mouth shut with the media and talking about the fan base, he'd probably still be okay.
But the guy that I thought of who coached a similar program to Northwestern is David Shaw.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. That's a really good one. And he's been out for a while now, hasn't he?
So there you go.
That one right there really fits the mold, in my opinion. Yeah.
All right, folks. We're talking Huskers here at the Voice of College Football.
No, we're talking Northwestern.
We're talking with this is the new Northwestern channel. Yes, absolutely. With the number of people they have in the stands every week, I don't know how many people we could expect on a live stream to talk Northwestern football.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, because when Nebraska plays there, the stands are all Husker fans. So.
So, Greg, with Big Ten Media Days coming up in 2 weeks, let me ask you this: since we don't know what players are accompanying Matt Rule, what players would you select?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about this on Friday last we were here.
Did we? Did I ask you that?
Well, I just kind of speculated.
Oh, speculated who would be going. I got you.
I mean, number one, I'm sure 100% sure that Ty Robinson would be one of the three. Just obviously because of his tenure at Nebraska and his position there on the defense as probably the leader of that defense coming in. And I got to think that you got Jeff Sims as well. Obviously because he's going to be the guy running the show on the offense. That's pretty much a given at this point. I don't see Chuppa Purdy or Heinrich Harburg beating him out as a starter. And plus, he just got a brand new NIL deal with John Deere, the tractor company. So that's going to, bank him some pretty good coin in his pocket. I didn't look at the details on it, but it'd be nice to have John Deere there flipping you a paycheck. But the third one, boy, it's hard for me to come up with a solid number three. Yeah, you have a lot of dynamic guys that speak very well, but a lot of these guys haven't played for Nebraska yet. And that's the thing that draws me back from Jeff Sims is that, he hasn't played a game at Nebraska yet, but I think you still have to bring him. Name that keeps kind of popping up in my head would be Teddy Prohaska, even though he's been hurt for the last couple of years. He hasn't been able to play a full season. But Teddy's very likable, and he's a Nebraska kid. I would say maybe him as a guy, or maybe a Nick Henrich would be another good pick. Even though Nick's great to listen to and stuff, and he's got just this booming, very bassy voice to him. So you always got to turn your volumes down on when you're recording him. But he would be a good one as well, in my opinion. So I don't know. I mean, a lot of times you get two offensive guys, one defensive guy. I don't know. Maybe I throw like a Quentin Newsom in there maybe as well. We're just going to have to see. Because we don't really know who the real leaders are going to be on this team moving forward with all the changes that have been made. I don't know. Maybe you go with a veteran like a Billy Kemp, even though he's another guy that hasn't played a game here yet, but obviously has played a lot of college football at Virginia, and his name's in the leader book there of all time, stats. So I don't know. There's a lot of guys to pick from. I mean, Anthony Grant, I don't know. I don't think he's as dynamic on the mic because you do have to bring guys that are articulate and have a lot of personality and are not scared by being out there in front of people and speaking. So that's it. There's a lot of candidates, but it's going to be interesting to find out who exactly those three guys are.
It is a painful task as a reporter talking to certain players because they're just not comfortable with it. They don't want to talk. They might be the nicest guy in the world, but they just, that's not their thing. They don't like it, or they're just haven't learned to communicate, in that setting. And it's just one word answers. And there's a craft to trying to get more out of them and not have them just answer. It's going to be a tough game.
One guy,
that's it.
In my opinion, one guy that would be phenomenal would be MJ Sherman. I mean, this guy is solid gold when you put a mic in front of him. But again, another guy that has not played a game here yet. And, all these guys I'm talking about have only been here for 5-6 months. So, yeah, generally you want to have guys that have been in the program and that, kind of have more of the Nebraska traditions and everything down. But he's great, though. When he's in front of the mic, he is just outstanding. Such a smart kid, very confident, and has something to prove after coming to Nebraska from Georgia.
Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our Tuesday Nebraska show that we deliver each and every week with Greg Peterson, Husker Online. Get on over there, check it out right here on YouTube. The videos will be fast and furious once Big Ten Media Days cranks up, and then it's on into fall camp. We've got some questions here for you, Greg. Fong Wei wants to know, Greg, compared with recent years, will reporters have more access to practices?
That's a hard one to answer because we don't know yet. Besides fall camp, I can say this is that the access was better than it was under Scott Frost. At least we get a look at them every week. We did in fall camp, and I kind of expect that to carry on to. We should be able to have access, I think, every week during, at least one day a week to do video and photo of practice for a short window. Just because Matt Rule he's very media savvy, and, he's not one of those coaches that shies away from the media. He's not trying to hide anything. Like Scott Frost didn't want you to see anything. It was kind of weird. But I think, with Matt Rule being, obviously a head coach in a Power 5 school previously, and then being a head coach in the NFL, he's much more in tune with the media. And, like we've talked about when we were on the road with him down in Texas, that he just comes and volunteers information to you that you didn't even ask to know. So, yeah, I think it is going to be much better than it was under the Scott Frost regime. But Mike Riley, his access, that's pretty hard to beat. I mean, he was so straightforward with you. So we've been spoiled here in Nebraska. We've been used to having way better access than almost any of the other top 100 schools in the Power 5. And then it kind of fell off a little bit with Scott Frost, which was a shocking kind of a deal because you would think, hey, he's a Nebraska guy, but he just was not. He's just not a dynamic personality. He kind of wanted to stay in the background and not have to deal with a lot of questions. But when you did talk to him, he was fine. But he just would rather not have to deal with it. Matt Rule knows that it's a big part of it. You got to win the media, and you kind of saw the effects of when Scott Frost was still head coach. That he took a beating sometimes in the media because of just kind of the way he was. And but Matt Rule is totally a different guy. He knows his stuff, and I'm very, very confident that we're going to have really, really good access compared to what we had for the few years under Scott Frost.
Cornhusker Corners here, already putting down some money on the ball game here. I've already placed a bet that the Huskers cover the 7-point spread against Minnesota. Greg, do you think we win? Can we get a prediction?
Well, I think yes.
Yes.
Can definitely win. And it'd be nice to see the product that they have going on first before you make a prediction. But, going in cold, heck, I'll go ahead and put it out there. Nebraska 27, Minnesota 17. How about
Look at
that?
that.
How about that? Huh?
Look at that.
Huskers start 1-0 out of the gate and licking their chops to go to Boulder the next week.
Nice. Love the prediction. I will say that anytime that the spread hits, now consider this. A touchdown spread is a healthy spread, but at the same time, as long as it's under a score, this could be the closest game in the world, and it could be 24 all with 50 seconds left in the game, and Minnesota scores a game-winning touchdown, and
Sure.
they hit the number. So anytime it's less at a touchdown or less, that's a tough call, of course. But man, the odds say to me that Nebraska is a good pick with 7 points. That's, again, it's not a
Yeah,
crazy spread, but it's a little healthy.
and I think, I mean, obviously fall camp hasn't started yet, but I think that Nebraska's in a really good spot where you're going to see something different. Obviously a new defensive scheme, um, a new offensive scheme that is more balanced than what we've seen, under the last two head coaches. Because obviously Mike Riley, favored throwing the ball. Scott Frost, same way. Matt Rule knows how to win games. He knows he's got to win in the trenches and he's got to run the ball. It's got to be like a 50-50 mix. And that's where I thought Mark Whipple really let Nebraska down last year because he insisted on throwing the ball. And once Mickey Joseph took over the reins, he wanted to run the ball. But you had those two clashing, and Mickey Joseph ended up letting Mark Whipple basically do what he wanted to do. Otherwise, I think last season would have ended up differently. But with what Matt Rule has installed here and with his coaching staff that he's assembled and has just captured all the players, new and old players, they really believe they've bought into what his system is, and I just see an overall confidence level that's much higher coming into this season than it's been in probably 4 or 5 years at least. So I'm going off of that, saying that I think Nebraska wins that game outright and really vaults themselves into having possibly a pretty good season just by starting it out right. Because last year I think the whole thing fell apart after Northwestern mounted a comeback and ended up beating Nebraska in Dublin, and that just set the tone for the rest of the season. I think everybody kind of just gave up after that and just did not believe in their coach and the system that was installed there. So I'm looking for a big rebound here coming out and starting off strong because you have 2 back-to-back road games to start the season. Obviously Colorado's rebuilding as well. So we really don't know what they're going to look like, but I can tell you this, they're, Nebraska versus Colorado, nobody's taken any plays off in that game. There's no love loss, between those two programs. And obviously Colorado wants to make a big statement, especially if they want to get out of the Pac-12 and try to get back in the Big 12. Who knows what's going on there? But, I think Nebraska's just got a great opportunity to start off their season 2-0 and then get a couple easy ones before they get back into the conference schedule. And you know how big it is when you can start off 1-0 with one conference win already in your pocket. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, as I understand, Illinois 2 years ago and Northwestern last year would be able to tell you exactly that.
Yep.
Yeah. I give Nebraska on the road against Minnesota. I give them a 35 to 40% chance of winning, meaning it's almost a neutral site toss up, Minnesota's slight edge. Nebraska's not been losing 8 and 9 games, and teams like Minnesota and Iowa and Wisconsin winning 8, 9 games because the talent differential's crazy. It's not.
No,
The talent differential is like 0 between these two teams.
absolutely.
This has just been more about Minnesota's been running a really good program under PJ Fleck, and Nebraska's been dysfunctional. Now, if Matt Rule can correct that
Absolutely.
immediately, I have great faith that he's going to correct it eventually. But, this is a bit to ask. I don't think it's a lot to ask. I think for game one.
Also, in my opinion, year in and year out, Nebraska has more talent than, there's probably 4 or 5 teams, at least 4 teams in the Big Ten that always have better talent, but that's about it. So Nebraska, I would always say, is ranked around 5 or 6 in talent level, and they just haven't been able to put it together. And it's coming from a team that, has to recruit, all across the country. So, and they've always done a pretty good job of bringing in good talent from other states. And, so talent's never really been the issue. It's just how you develop that talent and how you use it. And like I said, I have a lot of confidence in Matt Rule that he knows how to use the talent that he has. He's proven that everywhere he's been.
Grant Brix is the number 1 rated player in the state of Iowa. On3 has him as the 2nd rated interior offensive lineman, guard center in the country, top 75 national recruit. Our guy Fox is asking, Greg, what's the word on Grant Brix? He needs to commit to Nebraska so I can listen to all my K-State friends cry.
I like that. Yeah. And he just got named to the All-American Bowl too. So he'll be playing in that, which is formerly the U.S. Army All-American Bowl. But he'll be playing, in San Antonio down in January. So, that solidifies his spot as one of the top offensive linemen in this class. And, like we talked about last week, he's kind of keeping things a little close to the vest right now. He's got 5 teams that he likes, and he's yet to really, name a favorite. And all those teams obviously are, Big 12 and Big 10 teams. But I really, in my opinion, I think that I think he's going to end up at Nebraska. I don't really think K-State's a player there, but you never know with what they've done, here recently. But I really, in my opinion, I think he's favored in Nebraska, and when he's ready to finally make his decision, it's going to come before the season starts. But I expect him to end up in Lincoln.
Last time Nebraska beat Minnesota was 53-28, 2018. That was at home.
Yeah, they're due. I mean, I was going to say that earlier. They're due against Minnesota.
They haven't won at Minnesota since 15.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah.
So that means they lost in 17, 19, 20. Yeah.
It's one of those head scratchers that, you just you go into Minnesota week and you just kind of think, hey, Minnesota's had our number for a while. When are we going to finally turn it around? And you know what? TJ Fleck's done a hell of a job there. Hats off to TJ Fleck.
Have you noticed? He's 11-2, 9-4, 9-4 his last 3 full seasons. So that's pretty tough. Pretty good.
Yeah.
At a place where it's difficult to bring players.
It is.
Do you know if On3 has done any recent re-rankings? Do they do
It's coming up shortly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, because we're completely confident that a lot of these guys are going to get a big bump. I mean, like a Daniel Kalen definitely is in for a big bump. Um, Gibson, I'm sorry, yeah, we were talking about Grant Brix, but Gibson Pyle was the guy that just got invited to the All American game. I totally mixed those two guys up. The current Nebraska commit from Texas, Gibson Pyle. But I expect him to get a big jump too, up to a 4-star. But there's a lot of guys here in the re-rankings that are going to definitely get nice bumps, and we'll kind of see where that what that does to change any of the national rankings or what have you. But there's several players there that that will definitely get some stars added onto their profile.
You can sponsor us here at the Voice of College Football Nebraska. Just hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, and we can let you know how we can benefit you and your business. And we also have a Discord link where you can talk Nebraska and talk college football all the time. That's at patreon.com/MarkRogersTV as well. Other than that, I believe we've pretty much hit the end of the line. Any more comments, questions? Anyone else? Going once, going twice? All right, Greg, appreciate you being here. 2 weeks away from Big Ten Media Days.
Yeah, you know what? I'm starting to look forward to it. Kind of come to that conclusion that my free time is about over with for the summer, and ever since COVID broke out, I've yet to go on that July summer vacation down to Mexico with my wife. So maybe next year, after a successful season and a bowl trip. I'll take a bowl trip instead of that July vacation right now.
Yeah, it would be nice to talk about Nebraska winning more than 3 or 4 games this next season, and I believe that that's going to be the case.
It's hard. It's really hard to live here when you're winning 3 or 4 ball games a year. It's just it's hard to get used to. If you've been somebody that's lived here their whole life, or basically their whole life, and not winning 9 games a year just doesn't seem right. So, God, you sure look forward to putting something together and finally being relevant again. That's the biggest thing. Because Nebraska fans have never thought Nebraska wasn't relevant, but the national view on that is much different.
When I hear the term relevant, I think of 2 things basically. One is that if Wake Forest goes 11-1 this year, they've made themselves relevant for the season. So, just based on being that good this season, even though generally nobody cares about Wake Forest, and as soon as the off season hits, they're back to being irrelevant. They made themselves relevant. They went to an ACC championship game 2 years ago. Then there are the opposite end of the spectrum would be a Nebraska where they haven't been relevant in terms of competing for a conference championship since the first year in the Big Ten. But they've put themselves in a place historically where, in a sense, they're always relevant.
Yeah, and with their fan base, obviously, that is a national fan base because of all the native Nebraskans that have moved away and teach everybody around them wherever they live now about Nebraska football. And by the way, you're probably gonna get a bunch of emails from Winston-Salem people here tonight after that, but
not that they haven't heard that before.
But true Nebraska fans, you hear it all the time. As an example, our friend John, there at Corn Nation. I lump him into that fan group where all they can do is bitch and moan about the offensive line and how things aren't the same as they used to be and stuff. And when you're more involved with things inside the program, you kind of see what's going on with where the problems are coming from, and like we mentioned earlier, the talent is not the problem. It's developing that talent. And so, like I'm trying to point out, is that true Nebraska fans, they're just waiting for it to come back to where it used to be, instead of just complaining about everything. And the unfortunate thing is, it's taken longer for Nebraska to kind of bounce back than other programs that we've seen struggle, that were right at the top of the heap, like right when Nebraska was in the 90s and everything. And I mean, we know who those programs are that have had problems too, but the fan base has always stuck with them, and that's a plus. I mean, you're not going to see any 3-win team still having a full stadium, sold out every week. So the support system is there. You just got to utilize it now and build on something. And that's what really excites me with Matt Rule and just his way of doing things. And one of the most impressive things, I think, too, is that he is a guy that has really embraced the history of Nebraska football, and what the program's always been. And he always was, even when he was a walk-on at Penn State. They used to watch Nebraska games. I mean, you didn't have a lot of choice, too. Nebraska was always one of those games that was always on every Saturday back in those days. I just think that the way he has embraced everything about the culture here in Nebraska, it's just such a solid fit. And he generally wants to stay here and make this a home, which, to me, I mean, obviously Scott Frost was like that too, but we're talking about two very, very different coaches and two different coaching styles. But yeah, I just think that the confidence that Matt Rule is instilling in the fan base, in his players, and the entire support system, it's something special, really is. And plus, you've got these brand new facilities going in that at least most of it's going to be done here, which is going to be nice for us, for the media, because we're going to have a brand new media room to use, that will be dedicated to where we do all of our post-practice, post-game stuff. And beautiful facility where the players can go right from the weight room and open the door and go right onto the practice field, or go the other direction and go right on, to the field inside Memorial Stadium. So a lot of changes going to be seen here this season. Once the season starts and we actually get an actual home game, 3 weeks into it, but it's really going to be something to behold. And people are just chomping at the bit to see what this whole complex looks like when it's done.
All right, folks, make it on back next Tuesday, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. Join Greg and the rest of the crew there, Husker Online, right here on YouTube. You can watch what you missed as soon as we shut it down here. The video posts automatically, so check out what you missed. Greg, we appreciate it. Enjoy your rest of your summer days.
Yeah,
they dwindle down.
My 2 weeks of freedom. Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
See you later.